It's a felony. A physician had his license revoked by the medical board and received 4 life sentences for deaths resulting from prescriptions written in pain clinics, pill mills. And the pharmacist that I mentioned earlier had his license revoked and is now doing prison time. Well, what's corresponding responsibility? What's the pharmacist have to do with this? Are you expected to have an x-ray machine, draw blood, weigh the patient, do any of these things? No. The physician is responsible for that sort of thing. But we all have, we have our circumstances, we have tools available for us where you know this thing isn't right. You should be a little bit suspicious. You should look into it a little bit more. And I'm sure you've all heard the excuses, like our friend here says, I usually don't get my hydrocodone refilled early, but when I do, it's because the pharmacist shorted me. The ones that weren't stolen went down the sink. As I was on my way out of town to a funeral, my doctor said it was okay. Stay buzzed, my friends. Heard them all, you know. Things, really ring your bell. If you have a prescription presented to you from a patient who address is in Athens, Ohio, the physician is in Florida, and you're here in Youngstown, you might want to take a look a little bit further at what's going on. That's corresponding responsibility. But it's what would be expected of a reasonable pharmacist. Here's a couple, I have 2 cases here of some people who did not exercise corresponding responsibility. First pharmacist here, and I met him at his hearing when I was a board member. Several of the physicians in his area were known for indiscriminately prescribing controlled substances, particularly Schedule IIs, for weight loss. Patients came from great distances to obtain the drugs. In fact, they had swap meets and tailgated in his parking lot. A lot of these prescriptions occurred, most of them occurred after the medical board adopted its rules. 473111-4, if you want to look it up, that established the criteria for legitimate use of controlled substances and weight loss. And some of these patients, like one of the folks was involved, 127 pounds, 5 feet 10, and he received 1,050 Dizoxin tablets within 776 days, all over. The pharmacist's excuse, it was written by a licensed physician. It's a legitimate prescription. He got his license revoked by the board. He was convicted of trafficking and in prison for a couple of years. That's not that's not exercising responsibility. The second case was a fellow that owned a pharmacy. He was approached by an internet pharmacy. I don't know if you get spam like I do that offering Vicodin and Viagra, all you want over the internet. This pharmacy approached him with a proposition that they would send him prescriptions, he would fill them, and they would pay him very well to do it, and send them out to the patients, in quotes. He asked somebody from the Board of Pharmacy about it, advised him not to do it. He did it anyway. Almost all of the prescribers practiced outside the state of Ohio. Almost all of the patients that he filled them from resided outside the state of Ohio. And most of the time, the physician and the patient that he was getting the prescriptions for were not even living in the same state. The doctor was in Florida, the patient was in Montana. And during a 4-month period, this guy dispensed 6,300 prescriptions, 660,000 doses of controlled substances, mostly Vicodin. He got his license revoked. Corresponding responsibility is a serious thing. to get disciplined for it, you've got to really wantonly and flagrantly, you got to disregard it, and that's what these folks did. But you need to exercise reasonable responsibility. And just because a physician wrote the order doesn't mean that it's right. Well, the legal response, the legislative response to the problem of prescription drug abuse came out in 2011. It was House Bill 93. This had started in 2010. Then Governor Strickland put a task force together. I happened to serve on the law enforcement part of it because of my years on the board, but basically to come up with these problems, they introduced a bill. Well, they got to an election, and elections are more important than legislation like this. They put it off until the next year, and it went through. But the bill set very stringent requirements for ownership and operation of a pain clinic. They had to be licensed by the Board of Pharmacy, in addition to the physicians being licensed by the medical board. Physicians who owned or worked in these clinics were required to have subspecialty certification in pain management, anesthesiology, or some other appropriate area of medicine. They they exempted pain clinics that were run by hospitals and educational institutions that were legitimate. They did one thing that was really amazing to me, something that has galled pharmacists for years. They put limits on the amount of controlled substance that a physician could dispense. They had a per patient was a 72-hour, and a physician was not allowed to dispense more than 2,500 doses per month to anybody, or to everybody in total. And this is the first time that they have ever really effectively got into physician prescribing. And they also required the use of ORs under certain circumstances. They allowed the Board of Pharmacy to write rules. And one of the most important law enforcement tools they have is both the medical board and the pharmacy board were given summary suspension powers over these clinics, over the licenses that they held. Now the board has had summary suspension authority. In fact, we got it when I was on the board almost probably about 20 years ago. If someone is found to be imminent, real danger to the public health, the board can come in and suspend their license on the spot, close them down, that's it. The board then has 30 days to hold a hearing on that suspension and present evidence that it either should stay in effect or give it back to them. So this is a very powerful tool. Most of these rogue pain clinics, as a result, closed down. But the ORS program received a lot of attention because the boards, both medicine and pharmacy, were given the authority to write regulations on the use of it. The ORS stands for the Ohio Automated RX Reporting System. It's been in existence for a number of years. It started, I think, incepted around 2002, but actually started up in about 2004, 2005, around in there, as a program where pharmacies were required to report on certain drugs, and these are the ones. The Schedule 2, 3, 4, and 5, Schedule 5 substances that required a prescription, and tramadol, anything including tramadol, and was available for physicians and pharmacists to utilize as a tool. The last two sections were put in about a year and a half or 2 years ago that required all prescribers, physicians, who are going to personally furnish is the term in the law, but who dispense to their own patients, were also required to report these, and wholesalers who sold to dispensing physicians were required to report their sales to ORs. And again, the requirements are done on a weekly basis that these go in. What can ORs reports be used for? Medical treatment. Medical treatment by a physician, medical treatment by a pharmacist, medical treatment by a dentist. Current patient, prospective patient, an appointment, a referral, a new script presented. Those are things that pharmacists or their designee now, physicians with their designee, can go in and look at them for. Certain law enforcement have the ability to subpoena them. Medicaid has a right to look at certain ones that attend to theirs. But they're not for pre-employment screening, they're not for searching for forged scripts, updating chart records, or other issues, investigating a drug loss in a pharmacy or a clinic. Just within the last year, a dentist was fined $2,500 for pulling somebody's record. That was not for a medical purpose. I don't know whether he was trying to get some girl's phone number or what, but anyway, he went after him. Now the board, Pharmacy Board of Medicine, as I said, wrote regs, and they've been in effect for up to about 3 years now, but when you have to report to ORs. Medicines are very similar to the pharmacy ones. I won't go through the specific medical ones. Some of them are a little more specific to medical practice. But the pharmacist is required to pull an ORS report on a patient when he or she is aware, this is an important word in there, when they are aware that a patient may be receiving reported drugs from multiple prescribers. When a patient is receiving reported drugs for more than 12 consecutive weeks, and that's whether you know the patient or not. It could be a hospice patient that's on drug. You still have to go in and pull an ORS report on that person. If you are aware that they are abusing or misusing reported drugs, overutilization, our friend with the early refills on his hydrocodone, they seem intoxicated, the things that would set red flags off to pharmacists under normal circumstances. Somebody's requesting the dispensing of a reporting drug by a prescriber that you're not familiar with. The one from Florida. You're in Youngstown and the doc's address is in Portsmouth and you don't know the patient. You're required to do that then. And also presenting a patient presenting a prescription that lives outside of the area and seems unusual. Again, that I talked about before. Except for the 12-week requirement, which can be a little bit onerous and especially if you know the patient that well. Most of these things are red flags that would cause a pharmacist to be suspicious and look a little bit deeper into anyway, I think. You don't have to know that they're going to multiple docs or multiple pharmacies. If you're suspicious, you can use it. It would make good sense. This is when you're required. This is a form, and it is a form that is in Pharmacy Board rule in these situations of exercising your corresponding responsibility. You can look at it that way. Again, it's a tool. A little bit of confusion that has developed, and that was over the introduction of House Bill 41, which has not been passed yet. It's still pending. House Bill 341 required required pulling an ORS report and reviewing an ORS report with any prescription for opioids or benzodiazepine by the physician and by the pharmacist. Started out. Certain things were exempted. Physicians that were dispensing something for less than 7 days, drugs for cancer, hospice patients were exempted from this. Nursing home, hospital, institutional facilities were exempted. And drugs that were given out for surgical or invasive procedures or from surgery clinics were exempted too. Thanks to Antonio, this does not apply to pharmacists now. You don't have to look at every prescription. You're not required to do it with every prescription, or if it passes, you won't be required to look at every prescription. You still, however, are obligated to pull ORS reports on the patients that we described earlier with the board rule. So, it just exempts you from doing every single one of them, just those that you would be suspicious about. So, that still applies. New thing that came out late last year was the morphine equivalency dosing that shows up on the report. This is a method of equating different opioids to sort of standardize the potency, and they've done this against morphine, and it was done by physicians at the CDC. Have assigned a relative potency scale to various opioids, and the ORS reports the cumulative morphine dose that or morphine equivalency on the paper or on the report that you get. There's also an 80 milligram threshold that's mentioned as a press pause, they call it, or press point. And I'll tell you what that is not. That is not an absolute ban on dispensing the product at that point. It's a trigger point, a point where the physician and the pharmacist that are looking at the patient or looking at the prescription need to stop and look a little bit further into why that is occurring. People on, in severe pain management take a lot more than 80 milli morphine equivalent dose per day. There's a reason for it, but it's supposed to, it's part of judgment. It's an opportunity to review, make changes, ask questions if you need to. This is a copy that I'm sure is clear as mud. I'm sorry. Screen's a little small and it's not real clear. But it's a copy of the ORS report that comes out that you receive. In the upper left-hand corner of the report is the patient detail box that contains the patient number. It's got the date of birth, address. Take a look at this very carefully, because the board, the report, when they search the database, uses what they call fuzzy logic, and it's fuzzy to about the 90% level. So if you're looking for Joe Smith, you're liable to get Joseph Smith Jr., Josephine Smith, take a look, because that will affect the morphine equivalent dose, and also the rates of filling for some of these. Each line of the orders reports contains a patient number which corresponds to the box. So when you're looking at it, make sure that they match and you've got the right patient, or you've got one patient and not combining two. Actually, look at the fill dates on them as opposed to the day's supply. That will give you a lot better idea of how frequently prescriptions are being filled. 30-day might be discontinued and they're taking something else, or they're getting them filled every 60 days, but that gives you a better idea than just looking at the day supply. Second page of it shows a listing of the prescribers and pharmacies that the patient's using. And again, you want to make sure that you isolate this down to the same patient. Check deeper into the red flags. Multiple prescribers might not be as much of a problem if they're in the same practice, for example, and that can happen. Multiple pharmacies may indicate that the patient is trying to illegally obtain controlled substances, but they also may be trying to receive gift cards, free turkeys, and gasoline discounts too. Again, this is for your judgment. This is not a replacement for that. And the last page of it shows the morphine equivalent calculation for that. If you could see it, you would see that, oh my God, oxycodone, I think oxycodone is a 1.5 equivalent. Take a look at one when you get one. You can see, but it shows you how it was calculated. It shows you how the calculation for that particular number, that 120, for example, is shown on the front page, how that was derived. And you can go to the board website. There's a calculator on there if you want to see what the dispensing of the prescription that you're going to give them would raise it to. Again, as a judgment. Review the high MEDs. They're calculated from all of the active opioid prescriptions that are identified in boldface on the front of the page, which is the active scripts, or supposedly active scripts. And it will include all of the patients that are in that box. So you have to look a little bit closer, make sure you got the right patient. MEDs can be over-reported very easily if a script is discontinued. They take them off morphine and put them on oxycodone or vice versa. They may be overstated that way. Take a look. Again, that MED over 80 is not chiseled in stone. And they may be underreported because right now the data is required to be transmitted weekly. And prescription that was just filled yesterday, today, may not be on there. So again, you want to take a close look at everything. The best tip I can give you is when you do obtain an orders report, document it. Write a note on the script, orders report obtained, 424-14, JRS, or in your pharmacy computer system if you have. It's particularly important if you, in cases where you are required to obtain the report, because the inspector can come back and take a look at it. And these can be traced back. You say, well, you know, this guy looks suspicious. I thought he was coming to 2 different pharmacies. I pulled a report on him on this date. An inspector could go back to the board and pull that out and say, yeah, he's right. Yeah, they did. We disagree by 3 minutes on timing, but, you know, it's extremely important. And one thing that I've always found the pharmacists, I think, are weak at is documenting things that they do. This one is important, again, because there's a section in the Board of Pharmacy regs that require you to do it. Pharmacists in institutional facilities who service them, nursing homes, hospitals, anything that comes under the board definition of an institutional pharmacy are not required to obtain orders, but a lot of them on admissions do, just to take a look to see what the patient may have been on, use it as a screening tool, and that is a legitimate purpose. What's coming in the future? Well, the board is working on regulations that are going to require daily reporting of the reported drugs, done on a daily basis. Now, most pharmacy computer systems can be set up to just transmit them, so you don't have to do it manually. If you're in a pharmacy, maybe some of the independents who do them manually, you might want to take a look at getting them set up so that they can be transferred. And you know, of course, if you do it now, even if it isn't required, the board will accept them on a daily basis, but you want to do that now. Antonio talked about Senate Bill 271 that would require photo ID to obtain controlled substance prescriptions and to retain them, and House Bill 341, that's, I'm sorry, 381, that would require someone picking up a controlled script to show an ID and have it kept. It could be onerous. It could be a way for you, though, to screen out scripts that you thought were a little bit faulty. There's nothing that prevents you from requesting an ID from somebody that you don't know that's presenting a script. If you're really concerned, it's one of them that gets that little feeling, you know, that you get when you know, your BS meter starts towards the red line. To ask them, because half the time, if it's not legitimate, they probably won't comply with that and leave you alone and go somewhere else. But you know, that also is a tool. I would just hope that Antonio is able to work with them so that we don't have something that's going to be onerous. So again, basically the use of ORS is a tool. It does not substitute for your personal judgment and caution as a reasonable pharmacist. It's a good tool for that. It's not perfect. You know, do you have the right Joe Smith on your report that you're getting? No, there's no positive ID required on any of this. Couldn't be, but it's a good tool. It has been effective to a degree in reducing the amount of drugs on the street due to doctor shopping and some of the indiscriminate prescribing that's gone on. Again, after the passage of House Bill 93, the availability of controlled substances, controlled prescription drug substances has decreased. But what's happened? This is from the Columbus Dispatch, April 18th. The latest year that we have statistics for is 2012. We set a record for overdose deaths in the state of Ohio. Prescription drug deaths dropped 12%. Great. Heroin deaths increased by 60%. We're looking at a total of, in 2012, of 1,914 overdose deaths in the state of Ohio. 697 of those are from prescription drugs still. 680 are from heroin. What happens? It's important that we get the drugs off the street. Do not get me wrong. We've got to reduce the amount of substances available to get off the street. But because we do that, does that stop drug abuse? No. Does an addict who walks into the pharmacy and can't get his phony script filled say, they closed my pill mill, I can't doctor shop like I used to, maybe I just ought to quit? Doesn't really happen. That's a supply side solution, and it doesn't work. The only way we're going to be effective in eliminating drug abuse is to work on the demand side of it. Treatment and prevention. And we're not spending near enough money as a society on that. I guarantee you, if there were no demand for prescription drug abuse, or for prescription controlled substances by abusers, if there was no demand for them, any physician that's indiscriminately prescribing, it's going to stop. Pill mills are going to go away. Our friends south of the border in the drug cartels are not going to want to supply heroin. There's nobody that's going to buy it. That's the only way we'll stop it, is by working on the demand, cutting that along with doing the supplies. Otherwise, we're just playing whack-a-mole. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I have a question.
Sure.
On like the requirements for when you have to do ORs, just thinking of myself, being a floater pharmacist and that, a lot of it is like geographical based, and a lot of times we're floating out of, I have no idea where I'm at, so how does the board look at that kind of requirement if something was to come down?
Well, I think you would look, I would hope you know what city you're,
you might know the city, but you might have no idea,
yeah,
of the area or the doctors or the patients. You have no information.
Certainly you could ask other help in the store. Again, the board's not going to go after you for something relatively minor. I threw those two cases in where those gentlemen lost their licenses to give you an idea of the extent that somebody has to go to attract that kind of attention. Use your best judgment. That's all I can tell you. And if you do something, I don't think you're going to have a problem. The guy that's going to have the problem is the person that doesn't do anything. Yeah, give me the script, I'll fill it out. I'm not, those are the people that have a problem. Anybody else? Well, thanks for having me up, and happy to see you guys are resurrected.
Joe, thank you very much. Well, we've had a long meeting here, just a few things at the end. I want to, Kevin spoke up a minute ago. Kevin Shishato, if you're not familiar with him, I pronounced your last name correctly there, close enough in there.
Yep.
District 14 trustee to OPA. So that's a connection, one of our connections to OPA. You look at what we've had here tonight. We have Antonio here. We have a connection to OPA. We had Senator Schiavone here. We have a good connection with Ohio legislatures. with the Sheriff's Department. We're building quite a good mass of connection and influence here with the number of pharmacists we have. One thing that I have, I'm going to have one brief issue of new business on here. Our bylaws allow me as president to initiate committees and appoint people to that. I'm going to initiate a resolutions committee and appoint our county trustees to be our initial resolutions committee that's broad-based throughout the whole area. Some of the things that we talked about tonight, you know, I mentioned on the thing, there seemed to be a lot of interest in the room. Should there be some sort of limits on the number of prescriptions that can be filled? You heard me say that across the nation right now, there's nothing in legislation. I checked with the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy. There's nothing in legislation right now that does that. That does not mean that we could not be a trailblazer or a trendsetter within Ohio to do something like that. Something that is thoughtfully researched and debated and put together as a resolution, perhaps starting here in Eastern Ohio, then spreading to the state in here, getting the support of OPA, something that makes sense, that is workable, then going to the legislature in here. It's something that could be done. That'd be a harder process in here since nobody else in the country has done it, but it's certainly not impossible, and it could come from here. So as far as something I'd like to have an active resolutions committee, those of you here to come up with ideas, thoughts of things that we should be establishing a position on and moving from there. I thank you very much, Antonio, for coming and making the presentation to us. Joe, thank you very much for the CE. And those that have left already here. So, any other new business for the association? Hearing none, I will call the meeting to a close.